Welcome, everyone. I assume that you can hear me fine. I am speaking from Japan at this time in the morning, and I want to give my sincere thanks to the leaders of this conference, the distinguished dean that just spoke, Taneti Juniarty, who helped organize this, and to all the distinguished delegates that are attending this online conference. It's my great pleasure to come back to let's see. There we go. I'm unmuted now, so thank you very much. But I was just saying thank you to all of the leaders, to the distinguished dean, the distinguished delegates that are attending this online conference. It's my great privilege to work with Indonesia again. I worked with Indonesia about a year ago. What I'm going to do here is to share my screen and share my PowerPoint slides with you. Let's see here. There we are. Perfect. And I'm going to start my slide set here and speak for maybe 45 minutes or perhaps a little bit less. I want to tell you that I make presentations on mixed methods and qualitative research in many countries in Southeast Asia. This presentation is very different because what I'm going to focus on today is how to actually learn mixed methods research. In many of the Southeast Asian countries, mixed methods research is a new methodology and people are not familiar with it. So I get contacted by people from around the world saying, how do I get started learning mixed methods research? So this is the content that I will share with you. I'm going to start a little bit about my background so that you know about me and why I'm presenting on mixed methods research. Then I want to go into 5 key steps in learning this methodology. And in talking about these steps, you'll learn something, hopefully, about how to design a mixed method study. You know, my field is not nursing, but I've certainly worked with many nursing researchers over the years. My subject area is research methodology and methods, whereas yours is nursing, or it could be psychology or sociology. My specialty is research methodology. I've spoken about the importance of taking mixed methods research and qualitative research to many parts of the world and having it be adapted to the particular culture of the country. I was in South Africa in 2008 as a Fulbright scholar, and then in Thailand in 2012. I started up the Mixed Methods program at the University of Michigan in 2015, actually. And we opened the Southeast Asian Institute here in Osaka and Honolulu, and we provide consulting services. I'm probably best known for my books about research methods that I've written. I also need to mention that I live here in Japan right now in the fall, and then in the spring, I will be moving to Honolulu, hopefully. But this is in the town of Ashiya, Japan, which on the map is located right between Osaka and Kobe, Japan. It's a beautiful small community with the ocean on one side and the mountains on the other side. And as you probably know, the Japanese people are so nice and polite. And I am studying the Japanese language every day. So I hope maybe in 5 years, I will be able to speak Japanese fluently. I said that I'm probably known for my books. Here are 6 of my current books that I'm going to be using in this presentation. I've written about general research design, the research design book and the educational research book. And then on the right, you see my 2 books on qualitative research. The 30 Essential Skills just came out in the 2nd edition. It's my most practical book, and it tells you step by step how I would do a qualitative study. And then the Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design book is the more advanced, where I talk about specific approaches to qualitative research, such as ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, etc. And then down on the left are my 2 mixed methods books. The first one in 2015, the 1st edition, is a concise introduction to mixed methods research. It's been translated in many languages all over the world. It's a very short book, but in this book, I attempt to summarize the key ideas of mixed methods research. It's a good place to start to learn mixed methods. And then the more advanced book, Designing and Conducting Mixed Methods Research, which is now in its 3rd edition. That's the more extensive, expansive version of mixed methods research. So how do you go about learning this methodology? In some parts of the world, people are trained more quantitatively, and that's been my experience in Southeast Asia, certainly in Japan and Indonesia and Thailand, in Singapore. People are trained in quantitative, but now we have qualitative research as well. And so bringing the 2 together in mixed methods is what needs to be learned. I think the learning process begins with a general definition of what mixed methods research is. Well, let me give a little background on this. It's approach to research that's popular in the social and health sciences. It's extremely popular in nursing research. And I think it can fit the research studies on aging quite nicely. And there are quite a few mixed method studies in the aging nursing research area. It's about 30 years old, but it really began developing popularity with a handbook of mixed methods research in 2003. So in that sense, it's less than 2 decades old. It does represent, for me, one of the 3 major approaches that you can take to your research study on aging and nursing. You can do a quantitative study, you could do a qualitative study, or to use one of the latest methodologies, you can use mixed methods as a study approach. It's gained a lot of popularity in the last 20 years, especially in the health sciences. The National Institute of Health in America has been promoting it extensively. And it's spread all over the world. And it's especially popular in the health sciences and nursing. I'm particularly interested in family medicine applications, where I am working right now. In fact, our mixed methods program started in family medicine at Michigan. I think it can be described in terms of 5 specific components. When you're doing mixed methods research, you collect and analyze both quantitative and qualitative data in response to your questions. You use rigorous approaches for data collection and data analysis in both quantitative and qualitative. You integrate, so you bring the two ideas together. In South Africa, a researcher said, well, John, mixed methods is bringing two hands together, the quantitative and qualitative, and integrating them. And then you use those integrative procedures in specific mixed methods designs. You know, we have designs in quantitative research, experiments, quasi-experiments, survey research, single subject studies. We have designs or procedures in qualitative. We do an ethnography, we do a case study, we do grounded theory. So it's no surprise that the mixed methods researchers in the last 20 years have begun really developing an understanding of these mixed methods designs. And then finally, you often frame this in terms of theory or conceptual framework, and sometimes philosophy. I put together a little picture of the key ideas of mixed methods research to me. First, if you're doing an aging study in nursing, collect both quantitative data. For example, you could do a survey, and collect qualitative data, like one-on-one interviews. Now, what we're going to do with these two databases is we're going to bring them together. And there are different ways that we're going to bring them together. They're going to actually merge or combine into each other, or they're going to connect where one follows the other, or we're going to take the two databases and embed them or nest them in some larger process. From this bringing together, and the term in mixed methods that we'll be using is the integration procedure. This leads to insight beyond what we learn from our quantitative analysis and our qualitative analysis. In other words, we're going to gain more insight if we bring these two databases together rather than just keeping them separately. So this is the idea, insight or meta-inferences. I'll be referring to this in a few minutes. So this is the core idea of thinking about mixed methods research. It's very simple, it's straightforward. So now we have a definition of mixed methods, and I've shown you a diagram and some text to describe it. I think the next thing I would ask you to do is to go out and find a mixed method study in nursing and study it and look at it. So one that's attracted my attention, and I was looking especially for a nursing study in Southeast Asia, and this is a study of nurses in the Philippines that have returned from employment in other countries. So eliciting challenges on social connectedness among Filipino nurse returnees. So they're returning to the Philippines. It's a mixed method study. Well, let me describe the study just a little bit since you don't have an immediate opportunity to read it. What they were interested in is looking at nurses who migrate back, come back to the Philippines from West Asia, and how they relate to their families and the communities. They have often have feelings of isolation, loneliness, anxiety, depression, etc. So they formed two key questions. It's the second box over here. The first is their quantitative question. What's the relationship between the length of stay, that is the length of stay back in the Philippines, and how they connect to their family and the community? And then they followed up with a qualitative question. is what defines communication after returning to the country for good. In other words, social connectedness and how they communicate this social connectedness. They collected both quantitative and qualitative data, survey data from 107 nurses, interview data from 12. They did a quantitative data analysis, correlation analysis, and they analyzed the data in terms of themes qualitatively. They discussed this as what they called a concurrent mixed methods design. Now, today I would use the word convergent, and I'm going to show you the convergent design in a minute. And they selected the qualitative interview people as a subset of the survey. So they called this a nested. In other words, the qualitative is nested within the quantitative sample. Well, they had some important results. The quantitative was not very significant. There's a very low correlation between length of stay and social connectedness. But they did come up with very interesting themes. You know, the personal themes that these nurses had when they came back, taking in, themes related to connecting to the family and the community, and themes relating to letting go, which is where they had difficulties relating to the family and detachment from the community. Now, I looked at this article for what were the most important mixed methods parts. Well, mixed methods was mentioned in the title, which is a good practice. They collected both quantitative and qualitative data. They had obviously studied the mixed methods literature because they knew about the designs, and they could actually state the name of their particular design, a nested concurrent design. And when they actually wrote up this article, you'll see there's a separate section for their quantitative analysis and one for the qualitative. And then they felt their qualitative themes were so important, they developed a visual diagram of those themes, which looks exactly like this. This was their diagram. And it's focused on social connection of these nurses who returned to the Philippines. And they highlighted the themes of personal, taking in, taking hold, connecting to the family, and then letting go some of the events that didn't occur, which resulted in difficult times. That's very nice. So they thought a lot of the qualitative data. I looked at the study in terms of a mixed methods, what a mixed methods researcher would look for. First of all, they had no picture or diagram of their design. I think they missed an opportunity to integrate leave of absence and social connectedness and actually put together a table that would show integration of the two databases. They have very little that they say about the additional insight that mixed methods gives them. They just simply say, well, it was important to gather qualitative data with the quantitative. So this study is a good mixed method study. It's missing some parts that I would recommend if they came into my office and asked the question, how do I conduct a mixed method study? Point number 3. I want you to think about the research skills that you have, either your own, or maybe you're going to join a team of other researchers. So here are the skills that I think that are required. Quantitative skills. Do you know how to collect quantitative data and how to analyze it? Say, do a survey. Do you know how to do statistical analysis? Qualitative skills. Are you familiar with how to do an interview, open-ended interview, or how to observe? How are you familiar with the qualitative data analysis skills? You know, where you take a text from an interview and you divide it into its parts and you assign a code And then you group the codes into broader themes, and you group the themes to tell a story. And you can use a qualitative software program. You need some mixed method skills. Certainly writing skills are helpful as you do research. And I think skills in receiving feedback. Realize that you're experimenting, you're testing your knowledge of mixed methods research when you conduct a study. You know, as I'm learning Japanese, one thing that I'm cautioned about is I've got to be able to take feedback and make mistakes. The same is true in doing mixed methods research. So, do you have the skills? In your project, do you have the opportunity to collect both quantitative and qualitative data? If you do, you now have an opportunity to do mixed methods research. Do you understand the basics of mixed methods research? That little diagram of the 4 boxes I showed you. Have you read books or journal articles on mixed methods research? Are you reading about this methodology? Do you feel that the problem you're studying cannot be answered adequately with just either quantitative data or qualitative? But both of them together give you a more complete understanding. Do you have time and resources to use this approach? Because you're collecting both forms of data, you're analyzing both forms, it is a rigorous approach. But I've worked with undergraduate students that are doing mixed methods research. I've worked with master's students. So it's not just a doctoral level form of methodology. Number 4, I want you to read about mixed methods research. You know, here's some of the books. There are 30 or 40 books. Now, granted, these are in English, but I think they're beginning to be translated into your native language. This introduction book I've already mentioned of mine. Here's another book by Plano Clark and Ivan Kova. That's a good introduction. Somebody asked me about this. Here's a book about nursing and the health sciences in mixed methods out of Australia. And then this book by Leslie Curry at Yale on mixed methods in the health sciences. I think that's a great book for somebody in nursing to read to get an understanding of mixed methods. And then, you know, I would run some searches of the literature using nursing and aging, for example, and see what mixed method studies are being published. Thousands are being published, especially in the English language. Here's an article on trauma research and mixed methods. Here's an article in primary care on mixed methods. Here's an article on population-based health promotion practices. Here's an article about mixed methods in China. Here's an article about mixed methods in physical therapy. Now, these types of articles I call methodological articles. What they're doing is they're talking about the use of mixed methods in specific fields. And then there are actual empirical articles where people are applying mixed methods to study problems in specific fields. And there are just hundreds, maybe thousands of articles that are using mixed methods now. Colorectal cancer screening, domestic violence in Jordan, mammogram screening in Chile, music therapy. So we have so many articles that you can look at. And I think you need to begin your process, your mixed methods study, by reading a few of these methodological articles, as well as empirical articles, as well as books. You can especially look at these two journals for many good studies, and there's lots of nursing projects being published. The Journal of Mixed Methods Research started in 2007, very popular. The International Journal of Multiple Approaches, that's very popular too. Then I want you to design a mixed method study. Actually go through some steps. I'm going to take you through the steps here. I know our time is getting a little bit short, so some of these steps I'll go through very quickly, but you can look at the slides. The slides will be available. You know, design your study where you find a problem that requires both quantitative and qualitative data. You need both forms of data to address the problem. Then write 3 research questions or aims. A qualitative question, and in this first column you see that's an exploring question, very open-ended. You know, what's it like to learn mixed methods research? Write a quantitative question that looks at close-ended independent and dependent variables, like people that are studying aging tend to use mixed methods more than people that are in the diabetes research area, for example. And then write a mixed methods question that combines the two. So we have these 3 questions that I would have you write down. And the mixed methods question is really a question focused on the integration, where you're bringing the 2 databases together. So for example, you could compare the results from interviews with the survey about elderly's self-esteem in your aging project. Or you can explain the results of the survey using focus groups. Or you can actually explore first, you know, do interviews first, and then develop a survey that would actually fit the aging population. So these are mixed methods study aims right here, which may be not very familiar to most people. One important step early on in designing a study is to list your 2 types of data. You know, I need to know what your quantitative data would be, close-ended information, and qualitative data. And there are various data sources. And at Michigan, in our workshops, we have people actually put together a table where they list out the type of data, quantitative and qualitative, who they sample, how many, and then any comments that they have. So I need to know what your data sources are, both quantitative and qualitative. This next step is really most important. Develop a design for your study, a set of procedures, and draw a diagram of the design. So there are many, many designs in mixed methods research over the years. What we've done in our book, the Creswell and Plano-Clark book, is we talk about 3 core designs. And then sometimes people use these core designs within frameworks or larger processes that we call complex design. I'm going to give you some drawings to illustrate these designs quickly here. First, these core designs. This is called a convergent design. What we're going to do is we're going to collect quantitative and qualitative data, and we're actually going to bring the 2 together. We're going to integrate the data. We're going to put this into a table and then make an interpretation. There's a slight variation on this convergent design, especially in the health sciences, where you collect qualitative data, but then you transform it into counts and combine it with a quantitative database. I call this convergent transformative design. And our integration is this merging of the 2 databases. Here's probably the most popular graduate student mixed method design, explanatory sequential. It's a 2-phase design. I'm going to start quantitatively. For example, I'm going to do a survey, and then I'm going to follow up with qualitative data to explain those survey results in more detail. Now, the quantitative results are going to give us p-values, confidence intervals, effect sizes statistically. But they're not going to tell us why those results occurred. So let's follow up qualitatively as a phase 2 design, explanatory sequential. The third core design is an exploratory sequential design. Rather than starting quantitatively, you see here in phase 1, we're going to explore qualitatively. And we're going to come up with information that then helps us build or make context specific or cultural specific our quantitative instrument or our intervention activities. And then we're going to test in phase 3, this quantitative phase, and then make an interpretation. Now, this type of design is very popular in international global health research. You just can't go into Rwanda, for example, and drop in a Western depression instrument. You first need to start by talking to some community members, getting their understanding, and then modifying or adapting the quantitative phase before it's tested. So this way we have a quantitative test that's cultural specific. I'm going to go through 2 complex designs here very quickly. So we're going to embed these core designs into an experiment. For example, we're going to collect qualitative data before the experiment starts to recruit participants, shall we say. That's a mixed method study, qualitative and the quantitative experiment. We're going to embed qualitative while the experiment is running. Or the most popular is probably embedding qualitative data after the experiment. Because we may know that the experimental treatment works, but we don't know why. So let's do a qualitative follow-up to explain it. And let's bring an explanatory sequential design in where we're linking the qualitative and the quantitative. This is a very popular design in the National Institute of Health Research in America right now. Here's another example. Let's use these core designs in an evaluation project. Let's evaluate a program. Start qualitatively, move quantitatively, quantitatively develop instruments, implement the program and test it out, and then follow up. But you see what we have here, linking these different boxes, evaluation boxes, are core designs. So we're embedding a core design 2 times actually here, exploratory here, explanatory here in the evaluation process. That's a complex mixed methods design. Okay, next, identify your data analysis. Well, we're going to do quantitative data analysis, coming up with confidence intervals, magnitudes of differences, etc. And we're going to do qualitative data analysis, codes and themes of experiences. It's going to show the complexity. But now, in mixed methods, we're actually going to integrate or bring these 2 databases together, comparing the results, explaining the results, building the results to new measures. So one way to do this is what we call a joint display. We're actually going to put our quantitative data over here, categorical data of these 3 categories, in the same table with our qualitative themes. And we're going to be able to look across these rows, or we're going to be able to look down these columns and draw some conclusions. I'm going to follow up on that in just a minute. Validity is very important. I won't go into a lot of detail about this, but doing a mixed methods, you do need to think about the validity of your quantitative scores, and you need to think about the validity of your qualitative codes and themes. And then the third thing is each one of these designs has certain validity challenges. A convergent design, where you're bringing these 2 together. You know, do you have adequate sample size? Do you have parallel questions? What are your joint displays like? So each one of the designs has specific validity threats that need to be considered. Draw inferences, draw conclusions from your integration. Well, this is a table for a convergent design. And you see on the left here, I have quantitative scores. And up here, I have qualitative themes. But I've added a new row and a new column on inferences. I can look across the high scoring people here and see how they differ in terms of those themes. Or I can look across the high, medium, and low scoring people and draw insight down this column. So you need to not only integrate and use a design, but now also draw inferences. And this is my last point in designing a project. The advantage of mixed methods is you can get multiple publications. So this is a study in Chile on mammogram screening. They actually published 3 articles from their mixed method study. They published this qualitative article on mammogram screening in one journal. They published this quantitative article on mammogram screening in another journal. And they published their mixed methods integration article in yet a third journal. And I'm going to add a fourth possibility here. You can write a methodological article and submit it to the Journal of Mixed Methods Research. So here are some of the steps in how to learn mixed methods research. Get a general definition, study a published study, consider your research skills, read books and articles, and actually engage in the design of a mixed methods study. And you could follow those design steps that I presented. That's it. And here I am wiping my brow after a fun presentation, actually. Now I'm open to any questions that you might have, and hopefully we have a few minutes for me to discuss those questions. No questions are too simple.
Thank you very much, Professor Creswell, for your wonderful speech. Actually, you still have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes left for your speech. But anyway, we still can use it for the discussion session.
Good.
Participants, so now we're going to open the questions. So if you want to raise a question, you can post on the message on the chat box, or even you can raise your hands and you can speak directly to Professor Creswell. Please.
Anyone raise their hand?
We're still waiting for the response from the participants.
Okay, good.
While we're waiting, maybe I have a question. May I have a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, Professor Creswell, I think it's very interesting since I haven't done any mixed method research before. I'm just curious about, is there any guideline, like is there any step that which one should be done first? Is it the qualitative first or quantitative first, or even we can do it simultaneously, or even no matter which one will be the first one? I think.
Yeah. Well, now you're talking about one of those 2 sequential designs. We had the explanatory sequential design and exploratory. So this decision is based on several factors. One is, do you need to explore with participants first before you conduct your quantitative study? You may not know the questions to ask. You may not know the variables to measure. You may not have an instrument that is specific to the Indonesian population you're studying. You may be trying to adapt a Western instrument to fit Indonesia. Use an exploratory sequential design. And also, if you have some training in qualitative research, you've read some books on qualitative research, because this design does start qualitatively. Now, you would use a quantitative explanatory sequential design. When you have an instrument that you're pretty confident is a good one to use with your population, you probably have a stronger quantitative background than a qualitative background. So you're going to start quantitatively. And you realize that gathering quantitative data gives you important results: p-values, confidence intervals, effect sizes. But it doesn't go deeper down to why people are responding the way they are. So you want to then follow up qualitatively. In the nursing field, in English-speaking journals in the nursing field, we see both explanatory designs and exploratory designs. And I think one could start with either one, but it depends on what you have in the beginning, in your first phase. Do you need to explore first because you don't know the questions, or don't have the instruments, or don't have good instruments, don't have good variables to measure? Use an exploratory. But if you do have instruments that have been well tested in Indonesia or wherever you're studying, conducting your study, use an explanatory design. That's how I answer that.
Thank you so much. So again, it goes back to our research question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor Creswell. Wow, we have 3 questions here.
Good.
Okay, for the first question from our participant is from Miss Herna Malini. So the question is, will it be allowed for us to publish our study in multiple publications? For example, we publish the qualitative only or quantitative only?
Yes, of course you could do that. But I also think that if you're using mixed methods, that opens the opportunity for a mixed methods article. That's what those researchers did in Chile, studying mammograms. They had a qualitative article, a quantitative article, and a mixed methods article. It is possible to just publish your quantitative or qualitative. But if you're using a mixed methods approach, why not do an overview mixed methods study? Now, you need to shorten the parts if you're doing the mixed methods overview project. And in that concise introduction book, I actually talk about how you can shorten the overview of mixed methods article to fit the word limit of a journal. But yes, of course.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So that's the response from Professor Creswell, Ibu Herna. The next question is from Ms. Kusrini Samarwati. And the question is how to develop questions for mixed method design and how to make it soundly for mixed method.
Well, how to develop research questions.
Correct.
Yes. Well, first you need, because you're gathering both quantitative and qualitative data, you need a quantitative question and a qualitative question. So the quantitative question would relate variables and hopefully be based on some theory. You're looking at the relationship among variables. You need a qualitative question that focuses on exploring a central phenomenon. For example, in that nursing study in the Philippines, they explored social connectedness. They had one idea they explored. In the quantitative, they looked at the relationship between length of stay back in the Philippines after working as abroad, and social connectedness. So they were relating it so that you have a quantitative, a qualitative. Now you need a third question, mixed methods, where you're integrating the two. And I showed that one slide that showed integrative mixed methods questions. If you looked at that carefully, it had both a quantitative part and a qualitative part to that one question. I was going to compare the survey results on aging self-esteem to the interview results for individuals for the self-esteem of aging individuals. So these mixed methods questions relate to what type of design you're using. So the wording is going to differ depending on your design. And in both of my mixed methods books, I give examples of mixed methods questions. You know, when we study research, we learn about how to put together quantitative questions or hypotheses. And we also, if we study qualitative, we learn how to put together qualitative questions. But those books don't address a mixed methods question, which is really the integration of the two databases. And so, since integration is a central part, we want to know what are the results that occur from our integration. And that joint display table is one way that you can put the two databases together and draw conclusions about integration. Good question.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Creswell. So we can draw the table first, as you mentioned on your slide.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Dr. Lin Lin. I think I know her, and she's my colleague. Hello, Dr. Lin Lin. Nice to meet you again. Dear Professor Creswell, my name is Lin Lin. I have questions regarding how we identify that the topic of our research question is good to use mixed method, or all research question could be conducted using mixed method.
Well, first of all, most topics can be studied using mixed methods. The question is, to understand your topic best, is it important to just do quantitative research, looking at relationships, or is it important to do qualitative, you know, exploring a central concept or phenomenon? Or are you going to really get more insight by collecting both forms of data? One is open-ended data, the other is closed-ended data. And so ask yourself, can I have a complete understanding of my research problem using just quantitative or just using qualitative? Or am I going to have really a detailed, in-depth understanding of my problem, a better understanding of my problem, if I collect both databases and then I integrate them and put them together? So all topics can be studied. Most topics that I've run into can be studied using mixed methods. The question is not the topic. The question is, can you collect both forms of data? And if so, will that give you a better understanding of your research problem?
Okay, thank you for your response, Professor. So
Yeah.
it means that any kind of topic can be conducted in mixed method, but again, you need to consider the other variable that is about the feasibility, which is about the resources or something else. I think, yeah, that would be should be the consideration one.
You need to consider, because you relate your sources of data to the problem you're studying. You answer a question with data. And so now, can that question be best answered with multiple types of data, quantitative and qualitative, or just a single type of data?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, wow, we still have another question from Ms. Riksa Wibawa. Is there any rule that should do first? Which one that we have collect? I think it's already responded before. The same with previous question. Maybe you can skip it. And the next question is, how about the time of doing research? Any guideline duration time best to doing mixed method? And about the sample, how many sample that we can use in mixed method research? Must one sample in qualitative and quantitative research, or like should be a different sample? So it means that can we use the same sample for both quantitative study and qualitative study at the same time?
Yeah. Yes, so I'll address the sample question. So the answer is yes. And in fact, that Philippines mixed method study of nursing migration back to the Philippines, they had one instrument where they collected quantitative data. And at the same time, they then did the qualitative interviews. So, and they drew the sample was what they call a subset of the survey sample. The qualitative interview participants were a subset of the sample that was used for quantitative. So there's an example. Yes, use the same sample and draw both your quantitative and your qualitative data from that sample. How sampling proceeds in mixed methods depends on the design. So if I'm going to do an explanatory sequential design, start quantitative and follow up qualitative, I'll do a large quantitative survey, and then I'll select some people that filled out that survey, a subset, to follow up qualitatively to help understand those survey results in more detail. So there, the qualitative sample is a subset of the survey sample. If I'm going to do an exploratory design, now I'm going to start qualitatively, say with interviews in the community to learn how people are talking about something. I'm going to have a small number of people. When I actually test out that instrument that I modify, culturally modify, it's going to be with a large sample. So there, the people are going to be many more than in my qualitative sample. And I may have much larger, different type of sample. If I do a convergent design, well, I need a large quantitative sample and a small qualitative sample, and then I'm going to put those results together. There are different ideas about how to sample in a convergent design. Some people collect the same sample size, both quantitative and qualitative. Sometimes those sample sizes are different. And so you'll see different approaches to sampling, but sampling needs to be thought about in terms of the specific design that you're using. Now let's see, the first part of that question. What was the topic of the first part of that question? Again, please.
Do you mean the first question?
No, there are two parts to this last question.
Okay. This question is actually asking about, how about the time of doing research?
Oh, yeah. Okay, the time of doing research.
Yes.
Well, you can see if you collect both forms of data at roughly the same time as in a convergent design, as they did in that Philippines study, nursing study, the time frame for data collection is going to be fairly short. If you do a sequential design, exploratory or explanatory sequential design, your timeline is going to be a little bit longer. But still, I think you can use any of these three designs within about a 6-month time period. Now, if you are doing a complex design, that adds more time in. I showed you that example of the evaluation process, steps, complex design, and how you're collecting qualitative and quantitative within the step. That's going to take more time. One of the popular evaluation projects is actually a study of youth in Sri Lanka. And they had many researchers on that team, and they gathered data over a 10-year period. So it was a very long time period. So if you want a short time period, use one of those 3 core basic designs. That's a good question.
Thank you, Professor Creswell. Wow, we still have many questions, 15 questions. So actually, because of the time, we still have only 2 minutes left. I just pick up one question that is the most interesting one. And because I think the other question like have similar, like which one should be done first, quantitative or qualitative? Professor Creswell already answered it, that it depends on your research question again. It's from, I will pick up from Dr. Windy Rahmawati. And when we conduct convergent design and we found contradictory results, so how should we interpret it?
Great question. And I often hear that question. Because when you do a convergent design, often the qualitative results will give you a different understanding than the quantitative results. There are several options that you can use at this point. The first point that I would make is absolutely you need to follow up and try to understand why that difference occurred. You'd be surprised how many people do convergent designs and they stop and they just say, well, there were differences, but they don't then follow up. Well, how can you follow up? Well, in one study that I report in my books, the researchers went back to both the quantitative and qualitative data and looked at them more carefully to see if they could explain those differences by looking at each individual database. In another study, people decided to gather some additional data, quantitative or qualitative, to help explain those differences. Another study, people looked back at the theory they were using to see which database really best fit the theory they were working with. And then some graduate students say, well, this is a limitation in my study. And once I finish my thesis or dissertation, I'm going to do a follow-up study to explain these results in more detail. So there are a number of strategies here, but the key idea is always explain those discrepancies when they occur. Sometimes people, and there's a recent article out, sometimes people will take the results of both databases back to the community members and ask them, which is the best picture? They may say, well, you know, your survey wasn't very good, didn't really ask the right questions, or maybe the interviews were not very solid. So taking those results back to the community and have them, or your participants, and have them look at the results can sometimes help you understand why the discrepancies occurred. Many strategies.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Creswell, for your wonderful speech and your response. So I think we still have many questions. So all participants, if you still have some question, please do not hesitate to contact directly Professor Creswell by email, as he gave us already, or you can post also on the private message to him. Well,
excuse me, let me interrupt here for a second. I have a website, johnwcreswell.com, and people post questions to me on that website from all over the world, and I try to answer every one of them. So johnwcreswell.com is a good
johnwcreswell.com.
It's a good way to reach me. Yes, of course.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah, this was a delight.
Yeah, it is.
And good luck on your research.
Thank you. Thank you. So everyone, if you want to post a question or you want to gain some more information, you can access this link, johnwcreswell.com.
Hi.
Again, everyone, please give a round of applause to Professor Creswell. Thank you.
Arigato. Arigato gozaimashita.
Terima kasih.
Hi.